cut their fingers off because they voted. We had some of the, so the violence, the reason why I told the 16 August story is because the election was on the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
And during the election, some of the ballots had to be delivered by donkey up in the Hindu Kush. And the Taliban killed all the donkeys. So that polling site went away. And so it was crazy. It was, and I'll never forget because I was the OIC in the Afghan headquarters that ran the security for all these points from an Afghan perspective. And I was with the Minister of Defense, the Chief of the Army, the Chief of Operations of the Army, all those guys, I was with them, and they were commanding with cell phones. And you tell rank in Afghanistan by the number of cell phones that you've got. And they would, that's how they commanded everything. Well, the next year I was in Uruzgan, and it was a parliamentary election, and I was responsible for 77 polling sites. Much smoother. The violence was way down. The fraud, though, came from Kabul, where they would look at it and they would say, well, this is a Dari district, or this is a Baluch district, they speak Dari, and so therefore they invalidated the votes. So there was still shenanigans going on. It's very hard.
In a multi-ethnic country, to a Westerner, Alex.
Oh, so Steve, if you go to these meetings, so I would go with the Afghan army and meet with the locals, and they loved the army. They hated the police, but they loved the army. You go, and the army would speak Pashto, but the locals would speak Dari.
Oh, and you had to have a...
And so you had my interpreter, Daoud, who's a very good friend of mine, lives in Boston. Daoud would be translating between three languages simultaneously. Flawlessly. But the elections improved quite a bit in understanding duties and responsibilities, from the governor to the police to the army, who's responsible for securing what. The IEC, the International Election Commission guy, was one of the bravest guys I ever met, because in the time leading up to the election, he had a lot of threats, but he wouldn't let me protect him. He said, because if I let you protect me, then I am perceived as in the pocket of the coalition. I have to be independent. Mm-hmm. And so he's living on the economy, or out, by him. It was pretty hairy times.
After a long, distinguished military career, you decide to retire. It must have been a terrific blow. How did you adjust to not having the discipline and the orderliness of your career?
I would say it was not, I wouldn't classify it as a significant blow. So I thought about retiring for about 6 or 7 years, but then they kept giving me these jobs that I couldn't refuse that. They're great. I had more fun than anyone should ever be able to have. That's not to say I didn't work hard, but I felt like I was being continually put into positions of importance where I can make a difference and make the world a safer place. Mm-hmm. And I believe that that's what I did. After 2 years in Afghanistan and having what I had said earlier was one of my two greatest experiences in the Army, they wanted me to stay. They weren't going to promote me, but they wanted me to stay, and I said, well, what can you offer me? Is it anything like commanding a 10-nation coalition command in Afghanistan? And the answer is no. You're going to go be some staff officer or some staff without any authority. I would say, yeah, Roger, no. I'm done. And so that transition wasn't as hard as you would think it was. It was time.
So I think your family's living in New York at this time?
They were in Leesburg, Virginia.
Oh, okay. Somehow I thought you moved from New York. How'd you find, you told us earlier that you did a lot of research about all the various places you might want to retire to. but you found yourself in this little place called Antrim, New Hampshire. How'd you find Antrim, New Hampshire?
Yeah, so when I retired, I transitioned and I was the COO and acting CEO of East West Institute, which is a global think tank that does track 2 negotiations between trying to bring countries that don't necessarily see eye to eye together. So we did a lot of Russia.
You're out of the military
Right.
at this point, yeah.
Right.
And this is in New York City.
New York City, yeah, right in Manhattan. Yeah, so we lived in Manhattan for 4 years. And
That'll make you want to come to Antrim.
I tell you what, I'd never move back. I'd take Antrim over New York City anytime. But my wife's from Boston, and I made the compromise. I said, you know, I'll move to New England, but there's no way I'll ever live in Massachusetts. For a lot of the reasons that we discussed, but more importantly because as a Lakers fan, I could never live in Boston.
Kind of sad that confession came out at almost the end of the interview.
So,
Especially after the Dodgers.
And after their current Lakers season,
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad.
so we looked around, and for those reasons that we talked about, we settled on New Hampshire. But we wanted to be close enough to Boston to be close to her folks and airport and, you know, this, that, and the other thing.
Is her dad alive?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because he was very close there for a while.
yeah, he's having some rough times. That's where she is now.
Yeah.
But so Franconia Notch was too far, so we decided on south of Concord. At the end of the day, it was just about finding our piece of land. And we found a
So you
piece of
looked for
land.
land first.
Right, where is it that we want to be? And then that ended up being in Antrim. And so we live on the North Branch River. We have, you know, kayaks out in the back, and, you know, we love it here.
Tell us about your children.
2 kids, both of them very close but diametrically opposed in terms of personality and everything like that. My oldest, similar to me, decided in elementary school that she wanted to be a veterinarian. And she went to Virginia Tech. She worked in the cancer research field for 4 years, got accepted to veterinary school and graduated last June. So she's a veterinarian in Texas, moving to Georgia in June.
That's
Great kid.
impressive. 4 years out in the work world and she still was determined.
It's a great leadership story. I won't get into details other than to say that her boss, she declined the job because they weren't offering her enough to live in Long Island. Her boss called her up and said, "We really want you to come work for us. What'll it take?" And it was like $5,000. I mean, it was a very mild amount of money. And he said, yeah. In 30 seconds, he said, yes. Oh, by the way, I only want you to work for me for 2 years, and I'll help you move on. And when she got waitlisted at UCD, University College Dublin, Ireland, her boss found out on it, said, "Come to my office, sit down," picked up the phone, called the dean and said, "You have to take her." Done. Phenomenal leadership. So my youngest one went to Northeastern. She considers herself from Boston. She did a gap year in Spain, funded all by herself, taught Chinese kids on Skype how to speak English,
Really?
taught Spanish kids how to speak English, translated Spanish cartoons into English, did all this stuff, but basically supported herself in Barcelona. Then went to college at Breda University in the Netherlands. Got her Irish citizenship, so she's an EU citizen, dual citizenship. And then through her grandmother, that's the way the Irish do it. And now she's a travel specialist living in Berlin, and she comes home tomorrow for a week.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Great.
Terrific.
So what do you do to keep yourself busy nowadays?
Community activities.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I own 2 companies. Eagle Point Global Solutions, which is a small consulting company. I'm working on refugee camps in northern Iraq. I'm teaching at Dartmouth
Who are your
College.
clients for the companies?
The government of Kurdistan, the KRG. I work for a company that's contracted by them to help with various projects, of which this is one.
If only the rest of Iraq was so well governed as Kurdistan, but
Kurdistan's really
Yeah,
a
but anyway, I won't say
shining example. And then I own with my brother-in-law, we own a guide company. And we're both certified New Hampshire fishing and hunting guides.
Oh, guiding.
Guiding.
Yeah.
And so we take, our major client is the Wounded Warrior Project. And we take 3 or 4 times a year, we take the Wounded Warriors up into the White Mountains. We teach them how to fish. We go hiking, rock climbing, ice climbing, dog mushing, skiing. So we really provide an environment. Most of these guys are PTSD impacted. We provide an environment for them to have physical growth and teamwork, and then we go through the emotional and the mental growth and healing aspect of it. And we're working on a contract with Dartmouth now to do a leadership course for Tuck. And it's not finalized yet, but we're working on it.
And you're teaching at the graduate level at Dartmouth.
Right now, I'm on contract with them. I'm working as a coach for the business school at Tuck, and so I help the business students think about leadership and think about how do you lead organizations. And so I'm helping with that, and then I also substitute in classes for them as well. So it's a burgeoning relationship, but it's still growing.
And you won a 6-year term, I can't believe it, as one of the, what is it, the election?
Supervisor of the checklist.
Yeah, for 6 years. That's a long term.
Yeah, that was a sleight of hand by Diane. Diane never told me how long it was until after I was elected. I guess if I was good, I would have asked the question.
But isn't there another story behind that? Because I think your better half told me a little story, and I don't remember if it was your father or her father that said it was time to step up in the community.
Yeah, her dad was an alderman in Melrose, Massachusetts. Yeah. And, I've always been about service. Mm-hmm. That's, my whole life has been about service. And, you can sit there and look and say, well, things aren't going exactly the way you want them. And things can be better. So the question is, if you think they can be better and you have the energy and the time to do it, then why would you not do it? And why is it that you can complain if you're not doing anything about it?
This reminds me of the Eric Tenney story. I've known Eric for 65 years.
Wow.
I was a summer kid. And when he figured out I was coming, I won't censor his language, when I was coming back full time, he said, if you have a problem about the community, you should do something about it, run for office. Otherwise, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
As Mr. Tenney is wont to do.
It's a valuable lesson, and I think not only kids, but more adults should hear that message.
Especially in this town where it's, a lot of the elderly. And, it's hard to think of someone between 30 and 55 who's active in the community.
So I know you're involved in other activities, including skiing. You're an avid skier.
Yeah.
You do Crouch Mountain ski patrol.
Yeah.
I heard you were out in Colorado during the avalanche season. So
Yeah.
So that's all. But what do you do to relax?
Well, play tennis quite a bit. In fact, my wife and I are in 2 weeks. We're teaching for Celeste. We're teaching tennis at the
Antrim Rec Center.
Antrim Rec Center.
Terrific.
And then I build kayaks. I've got 3 of them, I'll show you downstairs. I build kayaks, do a lot of woodworking. I built this and all sorts of stuff around here. And then I fish quite a bit.
I'm worried about how I'm gonna reduce this to 500 words.
Yeah. What's the next chapter?
Next chapter, so I consider it a phase. I'd like to continue my guiding business and consulting where I want, having the ability to pick and choose what I want to do. I'm considering offering my services at the state legislative level, potentially District 38. We're still working our way through that to figure out how all that works together. Again, I mean, we came to New Hampshire because of some very specific reasons, and it has to do with the culture and the people and those things, and we'd like to help retain those things as much as we can.
And certainly probably see room for improvement as well. Right?
You know, every place you go, there's always room for improvement. And part of that improvement, no one has all the answers, let alone no one has all the right answers. Mm-hmm. So it's about working with people to try to figure out the best solution given the time and the resources available.
Have we tortured this guy long enough?
I think we have. We're at about an hour, so I appreciate
Oh,
it.
okay.
Yeah, I think
Thank
went
you.
by fast.
Oh, you guys are awesome.
That's great. No, that's awesome.
That was good. Is that helpful?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think
500. Am I doing the initial draft and you're editing, or what?
yeah, why don't you shoot that? I like